Now, the first thing I like to do, get started on a project like this where the engine's got to come out. I like to get that antifreeze draining. So I usually take a semi-clean bucket. Then if I'm gonna save it in it, and get underneath here. And most have a drain like that plastic drain right there. This one happens to be a 19 millimeter. You just back it on out a tad, and then she starts draining out real nice like. Now on this truck, there is a plastic shroud right here. I'll show that for you in a second. There is a plastic shroud that's got to come off. This guy, I like to catalog things. Right there in the back. That's got to come off to get at that. It's got some 10 millimeter bolts on there. But take those 10 millimeter bolts, take that shroud down, 19 millimeters on that drain for the radiator. Get that draining down. And we'll get to work on all of this up here. Yeah. Okay, while our radiator's been draining, I've been busy taking some stuff off up here. Took the intake off here. There's a cover that goes on here. I like to throw the bolts right back where they belong so that I don't lose them. I know where they go. I could have a big pile of bolts at the end, but this way I remember where they're at. So when I put this thing back together again, which will probably be months from now because of the way I work, I'll know where they're at. So I took the intake off, took the fan shroud off here. So there's a couple of 10 millimeter bolts right there. One on each side, here and here. Fan shroud pops off, just slide it that way, get it out of your way. A couple more 10 millimeter bolts. One up in here, one over here, and your radiator's loose. Snip that upper line right there, undo that clamp, pop it off. I'm gonna go do that lower line on this side and pull my radiator on out of here. Now I've got all sorts of room. Once the radiator's out, the fan shroud can come out, and then I can work at getting all the rest of this junk off the front side of the engine, because I want all this stuff off of here to give me as much room as possible to pull this thing forward when I get it to come out, because it's got to clear that firewall back there, and so it's got to come this way to come up when we get it out. So I'm going to take all this junk off. The air conditioning compressor, I'm going to take it off the engine. I'm going to leave it all hooked up, because surprisingly, believe it or not, this thing actually has charged air conditioning on it still, which is fairly rare from what I've had to deal with most of the time, something this age. And up here, they don't keep the air conditioning serviced. So it actually has charged AC, so I'd like to keep the charged AC. So I'm going to leave that air conditioning pump just sitting down in this bay somewhere, but I'm going to take it off the engine so I can get as much space as I can to pull this thing this way when I get ready to pull it on out. So that's where we are. We're going to rip the radiator out of her here, take all this junk off the front side, and then we'll be to disconnecting bell housing bolts and torque converter plates back there. It's actually a stick shift, so there's no torque converter, which means it's got to come even farther forward to clear the clutch. All right, so we're working along here. Took the alternator bracket off. That's pretty straightforward. I think 13 and 15 millimeters get you those things. Those come off of there. Over here on the power steering pump, which I've just laid down in here with the reservoir and everything, because I'm not gonna unhook that. I don't like to drain them if I don't have to, but the power steering pump sits right in here. There's 3 bolts, so you have to go through and get those. That pulley, you have to take the pulley off first, then take the 3 bolts out, because it won't come out of here with the pulley off. The pulley hits there. So got the power steering pump. The reservoir has 2 little bolts here, and there's just a rubber grommet that pops in. Pull the reservoir, the pump, just leave them hooked up. Like I said, I'm going to leave this air conditioning compressor connected so I don't have to bleed the system out. I'm just going to unbolt it over here on this side and drop it down on the frame and set it over there. The fan is an issue because they've got they thread on to the fan, and it can be left hand or right hand thread, but there is a tool that comes in and threads into these bolt holes and holds it in place so you can smack on this nut. I've had success in the past pulling this off with a big crescent wrench and just holding this tight with a strap wrench and knocking. I can't get it to loosen. It's on there hard. I don't really need to take the fan off because I'm going to unbolt the entire water pump from the front of here and just take the whole thing off. So if you're looking at these, these bolts right here, they hold on the pulley, but not the clutch. And there's bolts in the back of the fan back here that hold the blades to the clutch, but they don't take off that big huge nut on the shaft there. It threads onto the shaft. The whole clutch threads on the shaft. Usually it'll say left or right hand thread somewhere up here, or on the fan shroud it'll say right hand or left hand thread. This one doesn't say anywhere. The ones I've done before were left, but they can be right. So I guess if it doesn't say right, maybe it's left. I don't know. But I've tried both ways on this. I can't hold it enough to get it to come off, so I'm just going to pull that entire water pump housing off there. So I'm going to take this bracket off, pull the water pump housing off, and I'll have most everything off the front of this engine. I may pull the intake. I don't like to if I don't have to, but I may need it for clearance, so we'll see.